collaboration with the Cyprus Mail, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
Coming up on this week's programme, thanks to satellite tracking devices fitted to our endangered griffon vultures, the authorities have identified a poisoner who, for the first time in Cyprus, has been issued with a massive fine.
We're focusing on the range that we know is used by our last remaining very precious vultures, because almost all of them have satellite tags on them now, so we know where they're moving. So we focus within that area to set up regular patrols by the dog unit.
And look skywards next week, you might see a comet that hasn't been close enough to see for 50,000 years.
It's going to come close enough to the Earth to actually be visible to the naked eye in about 5 to 10 days. It probably is visible right now using binoculars.
Making the headlines this week was a story that, for any of you who have followed our tracking of the way animals are treated in Cyprus, will find, I'm sure as I did, very rewarding. The headline read, "Record fine imposed for poisoning rare wild birds." So I've asked the Director of BirdLife Cyprus to join us on this week's programme and tell us how he feels about this. Martin Helikar, as I say, I have a feeling I commented on your Facebook post that this surely was the beginning first big step, because it's never happened before, has it?
It's unprecedented. It's never happened before, as you say, Rosie. So I think it's a very significant step forward. Time will tell. The hope has to be that this is going to be an icebreaker. This is going to bring about a sea change, because this is a very big problem indeed that is often invisible, and its impact is often, again, not very visible. But yeah, it has a tremendous effect on wildlife, and poisoners thus far have known that effectively they can get away with it. So we hope that this changes it. There's another big case that we're chasing up that has to do with poisoning of vultures, and we're talking about trying to change a whole culture. So it will be a long fight, a long battle, but yeah, let's celebrate this small victory and important step forward.
Now, I'm assuming that a lot of the people who lay poison baits are possibly not very wealthy villagers in remote areas where they see foxes, particularly, a protected species, I believe, as a danger to livestock and so on. So a €21,000 fine is going to be, A, difficult to pay, but B, very deterrent, surely.
Absolutely right. In this specific case, the perpetrator was acting to protect his chickens, but it's a ridiculously excessive reaction to losing a few chickens. That goes without saying. But as you say, a lot of this happens in the countryside, in rural areas. It seems unlikely that a fine of this level will be paid, and that will mean that the case gets taken before court. So we'll see what happens there. We hope that the court will see it as a serious crime against wildlife that it is, and uphold the fine in full, or even increase it, which is possible under the law. But the other thing is that, in a sense, that will be, if you like, an opportunity to give publicity to this issue again, which is not a bad thing.
The problem, of course, with an unpaid fine and then an appearance at court is that could take years.
It could take a while. Our experience with on-the-spot fines on the trapping front, so people who are fined for illegally trapping birds, is that in this case the process is relatively swift. But that is a big unknown. That's true. That is a big unknown. We have to wait and see. I mean, there's nothing we can do about that. But as I say, our role, I think, in this, apart from working with the authorities to ensure that such cases do get punished and do go to court, our role is to make sure that the message gets out there so that this acts as a deterrent to other would-be poisoners and other active poisoners. And unfortunately, we know that there's quite a few of those out there.
Where are they getting the poison from? These are banned substances.
These are banned substances. So in the specific case, we know it was carbamazepine, so that lanate, as it's usually called on the market, a substance that's being banned across the European Union. It's very difficult to know where it comes from, but obviously it's all too easily available. The ban on this substance is relatively recent, so obviously there are still stocks in place in various people's stores. So it is still available to people.
All right, if they've bought it before the ban, but are you aware whether any outlets are still maybe getting rid of stores they had before the ban because they're not allowed to?
I don't know on that. I mean, obviously, even using it if you have it in stock, it's still illegal. Whether you have it in stock or not, you're not allowed to use it. The honest answer is that it's not clear exactly where the poisoners are getting hold of this banned poison, but clearly they are. So the answer to that, or one of the answers to that, because it needs to be tackled from all sorts of different angles, including awareness raising. But one of the answers is just to make sure that there are serious deterrent fines imposed where the authorities do manage to actually catch a perpetrator, as they did in this case. Not an easy thing. And we have to give credit where credit is due and say that the Game and Fauna Service, the state lab, the police, the veterinary services worked very well on this particular case and with good result.
And I think that they have been trained how to do that at a wildlife crime academy. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so this is part of our ongoing program to save the vulture in Cyprus, the vulture which is on the brink of extinction. We have an EU-funded life program that we lead with participation from other NGOs and the relevant government departments. We're in the middle of that program, and we're looking to extend it actually because the twin challenges of the program, i.e. to save the vulture and to halt the poisoning, or at least make a serious dent in the poisoning, need a long-term effort and commitment. But as part of that, we held a wildlife crime academy as part of an ongoing program across Europe in Lefkara in Cyprus, and we had excellent participation. This was last summer. Excellent participation from all the relevant authorities. And these are the kind of things that are very enabling. They raise awareness within the relevant authorities. So for example, the average policeman, as you can imagine, is not particularly engaged with wildlife crime. It hasn't been on the agenda until very, very recently. So it's important to give people the tools, but also the awareness about the importance of these illegal activities.
And the particular incident in December, 2 Bonelli's eagles and a long-legged buzzard were the victims. So tell us a bit about those particular birds. They're not at least the vultures, which are so critically endangered. I think there's only 9 left. But they're also very important for our bird life here in Cyprus, aren't they?
Of course they are. It was 2 Bonelli's eagles, one of which had a satellite tag on it as part of another life-funded program. So that was part of the reason why this case was brought to justice. That kind of evidence was very critical in identifying the site of the crime and also eventually the perpetrator. And it was also a goshawk, not a long-legged buzzard. But birds of prey across the board are, by their very nature, rare because they're at the top of the food chain. So, an ecosystem can't support too many of them. So they're very vulnerable to this kind of illegal activity. And in this case, they were specifically targeted by this illegal activity. This, as I said, that those hidden menaces that unless you really dig deep and focus your attention on it and bring the right tools into play, it can go undetected. There will be many birds of prey, but also other wildlife that is falling foul to poisoning on a daily basis, and usually is just not found because the corpses will be disappeared by scavengers like foxes, which then, of course, can get poisoned themselves. It's a chain of poisoning. So, digging deep is very important. And one of the things that we're really encouraged by is the activity and success so far of the 2 sniffer dog units we set up under the same life program for the vultures. So these are specially trained dogs that go out and find these poison baits before they're found by the wildlife.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about them because they've made a huge difference to your ability to track bait, haven't they?
They really have. I mean, these 2 border collies, which were trained by specialists in Greece, thanks to the program, and they have 2 game wardens from the Game and Fauna Service as their handlers, and they've been active since May this year, and they've cleared more than 30 kilograms of baited meat and eggs and other things from the countryside so far. So that's 30 kilograms minimum of very dangerous substances. You can imagine how many lives of wildlife have been saved thanks to the activity of these 2 excellent dogs and their handlers.
Yeah, which rather makes me wonder how you know where to go looking. Are people reporting suspicious things, or are you literally taking the dogs out to areas where you think there might be a problem and hoping that they come up with whatever they come up with?
Good question. Yeah, absolutely, to the point. And the answer is a bit of both. So we're focusing on the range that we know is used by our last remaining very precious vultures, because almost all of them have satellite tags on them now, so we know where they're moving. So we focus within that area to set up regular patrols by the dog units. And the other very important part is acting on information that's given by members of the public, whether that be farmers, local villagers or hunters. And we're seeing an increase, I'm happy to say, very happy to say, in the number of people who are reporting poison or suspicions of poison baits having been placed to the Game and Fauna Service, which is great. The awareness raising element is absolutely critical. I think that's obvious. The dogs themselves are actually very useful in terms of awareness. They're great for publicising this whole effort. They're something that people can tune into and sort of feel an empathy with. So it's building in the right direction, and that's really pleasing when you face big challenges like trying to save the vultures from going extinct and trying to get rid of this real scourge in our countryside, which is poison bait.
Have you had a chance to visit the village from which this perpetrator came and talk, I don't know, in the coffee shops or to villagers and ask what they think about it? Are they with you, or are they outraged that their pal is possibly facing a jail sentence and a huge fine?
So since the fine was imposed, which is very recently, a matter of days, no, we haven't. But in general, yes, a big part of the Save the Vultures effort involves going to village communities, to local coffee shops, and making presentations about how dangerous poison is, about the importance of vultures and other birds of prey, and also getting people to talk to us in the program about what's going on, who's doing the poisoning and all that. And when that is done in the right way and anonymously, you actually gather a lot of information. And, there's 2 sides to this. One side is very disappointing, though not surprising, which is that using poison, unfortunately, is very much part of the culture in our rural communities. So people will admit that freely, that either they do or they know of someone who does routinely use poison. But at the same time, there is a growing awareness of the importance of species like vultures. That gives us more hope.
Well, it is hopeful. What can anybody do? Do you have hotlines or anything that if somebody's out maybe walking their dog in the mountains or something and sees something, or the dog approaches something that looks suspicious, who do they call?
Yeah, it's very important that actually, and I'm glad you asked that, Rosie, because obviously early action is critical in this before wildlife has the chance to be affected by this poison bait. So there's two numbers that people can call, which will get them very swiftly to the dog units into action, which are 9926 7916 and 9925 5086. So as I said, those are both for the Game and Fauna Service, and they're ready and waiting to take action on any information that's provided.
With their dogs. Let's go those numbers again. 99267916 or 99255 And I presume that those are available online. I mean, if you're out walking your dog and you don't actually have those numbers on you, can you find them online and call immediately?
Yeah, so if one was to go to our website and go to the project page for the vultures, then they're there. Yes, those numbers are there.
BirdLife Cyprus. Martin Hellicar, always a pleasure, and congratulations for the work that you're all doing, because we really need to hang on to those last few vultures and hopefully either import a few more to grow the population, but of course we don't want to lose them to poisoning.
Exactly. Thank you very much for the support in this effort, Rosie. Thank you.
This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
In collaboration with the Cyprus Mail, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
The biggest achievement of Crime Stoppers has been the ability of the public to be able to give information about crime anonymously.
There's no way I could have kept prostituting without the drugs. There's no way I could have had my body used like a public toilet, because that's actually what prostitution is.
And then the fourth series I started 3 days after I'd won the Oscar, so the whole of the Monarch of the Glen experience was all interplatted with the Gosford Park Oscar experience.
I was working with Ronnie James Dio, and David was going to reform Whitesnake in 2003.
Cyprus was chosen because Cyprus is a stable, peaceful and secure place.
We have to really look closely. What are we doing with children? What are we doing with adolescents? And what are we doing with adults that can help them move into a more literate situation?
The ones that I'm proudest of are the ones that were true discoveries, where we found something we didn't know existed.
A green comet which approaches the Earth once in 50,000 years may be visible to the naked eye when it comes around again very shortly. To tell us all about it is astrophysicist Stelios Tsangaridis, who joins us now. Stelios, this is very exciting because once in 50,000 years means very few people have seen this. Does it have a name?
Comet has a designation. It hasn't been given a formal name, I think. It probably won't be given a formal name, given the fact that it's only coming every 50,000 years.
So what's going to happen?
Well, the comet is actually outside of our orbit. It's posing no threat whatsoever to Earth itself, so that's a good thing. It's going to come close enough to the Earth to actually be visible to the naked eye in about 5 to 10 days. It probably is visible right now using binoculars. It's actually pretty faint. It's a long period comet, as we call it. A long period comet is basically a comet that that goes all the way outside of the solar system and then comes back in. It's actually conjecture that we think it's a long period comet, because obviously we don't have any records from 50,000 years ago, and we have no way of knowing that it's going to come back in 50,000 years. The idea is it has a periodic orbit. It lasts 50,000 years, or close enough to that value, and it's like an X-shaped orbit, but very elongated. So the sun is actually at one of the foci of that shape, and it comes really close to the sun on one side, and it goes really, really far away from the sun on the other side. And when we say it's really far away, we actually mean about half a light year away. That's about 50,000 times the average distance from the Earth to the sun itself.
Can we just go right back to basics and say, what is a comet, first of all?
Okay, comets are chunks of ice, basically. They are frozen materials that have ice on the outside and really dense metal cores on the inside. And when they're actually approaching the sun, the name comet actually is an observational name. So when they're approaching the sun's radiation is actually causing material from their surface to sublimate, to become gaseous, which means it gets left behind, and that's how they form their tail. It also what makes them seem fuzzy, like a fuzzy tiny little smudge, and that's we call that comet from the Greek word actually, which gives them the name comet.
And why is this one green? What colour are they normally?
Normally you would expect to have a bright white reflection from the sun. The greenish colour that this object has seems to be coming from molecular carbon that's found on the ice on its surface. So it's a diatomic carbon molecule, and this absorbs the ultraviolet radiation from the sun and re-emits back the energy in the form of green light.
So it's basically a ball of ice that's been travelling around space since whenever, but how can you measure this 50,000 years? I mean, since nobody was around to document it 50,000 years ago, as you say, how do we know that that's its sort of way it operates?
That's actually a very, very good question. First of all, discovering these objects is pretty rare as well. There's a few dedicated facilities around the world. This particular one was discovered at the Zwicky Transient Facility in the United States. They are looking for objects that are transient phenomena. They're not expected phenomena. So when you actually see something that is moving like that, you basically determine its coordinates, and you keep observing it and keep observing its coordinates. And so you actually have a small arc in its path. And then following the laws of physics that determine how satellites orbit around the center of gravity, you can actually trace its whole orbit all around the sun. And that's actually how we know, obviously, since we don't have any records.
Yeah, I find all this space stuff very confusing. I remember talking about the James Webb Telescope recently, and that was another sort of mind-boggler. There are a lot of people in Cyprus who are into this sort of thing, aren't there?
Actually, we're getting more and more. It's a friend, an astronomer friend, calls this the golden age of astrophysics in Cyprus. There's a lot of interest from younger people, and there's a lot being done in Cyprus for astrophysics at this point. There's an astrotourism project that's being handled by a consortium of institutions, actually. There's the observatory being built at Agridia around the Toulouse Peak, and there's a bunch of other planetaria being built around the island as well.
So it is a chance for people, I guess, to become a little bit more familiarised with these phenomena, but it'll be very difficult for us to see with the naked eye, won't it, unless we go perhaps up into the middle of the mountains where there's no street lighting, no light pollution in general.
Yes, the problem with observing a faint object like that, even in its closest approach, it's actually far enough away that it's on the verge of human vision. It should be obvious. It should be there, and it should be greenish. That should be apparent, but only if you're well outside the nebulae that are caused by the lights of the city.
And is there a particular direction you should be looking in? I mean, I know that people do say if you want to see, was it recently we had Jupiter in line with other planets and people said look to the southwest or the northeast or whatever. Can you help on that?
This is on on the other side, it's we're looking north and towards the high altitudes. It's supposed to be crossing the Camino Bardalis constellation, which is it's actually a constellation that we can see all year round. But in this particular case, it's actually higher up than it would be in the summertime. So it's near the North Celestial Pole. So it should be coming up close to the North Star on the top side. I don't know how to express that actually.
Okay, well, probably makes no difference to people like me. We just look up. But there are people listening who will know exactly what you mean, I'm sure. And the closest distance to the Earth is expected to be on February the 1st. Is that right?
Yes, that's its closest distance. It should be around 40 to 45 million kilometers away from us.
And we might be able to see it. It's quite extraordinary. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's actually further than the moon. People tend to get anxious about this. It's much further than the moon. Like I said, nowhere near our orbit. We don't have any threat from this particular orbit.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking of threats. I was just thinking of a fascinating phenomenon.
Well,
so February the 1st.
If it's not life-threatening or even species-threatening, then it's definitely a fascinating phenomenon.
And binoculars might enable you to see it. Otherwise, there are various places with telescopes around the island that I'm sure will be offering them to the public to go and have a look. So February the 1st. But I also heard, Stelios, that the best night to view it might be February the 5th. Now, why would that be?
That would be because it's actually passing through a dark patch of sky, and it's also got elongation enough to reflect more light from the sun. So it's not always the case that the nearest approach is definitely the best. It is in this particular case. The two observations should be comparable, but it should be obvious to the naked eye until mid-February, close to mid-February. And at this point, it's obvious even to binoculars, like I said. And obviously, you can see a very good image of it when you're using a telescope.
Well, there we are. That is astrophysicist Stelios Tsangaridis telling us all about this comet that has no name. I think they're given numbers or something, aren't they?
Yeah, it's designated as 2022 E3 ZTF from Zwicky Transient Facility.
That's all Greek to me as well, but never mind. It's been a fascinating conversation, Stelios. Thanks for telling us all about it, and I'm sure you'll find people going out into the countryside where it's dark to see if they can catch a glimpse of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Get in touch with the Cyprus News Digest by emailing cyprusnewsdigest@gmail.com.
And finally, the other big story this week was yesterday's general strike. From 12 noon until 3 in the afternoon, almost all workers downed tools. The exceptions were skeleton staff at hospitals and other important infrastructure projects. But other than that, there were flights cancelled at both Paphos and Larnaca airports. It affected intercity and rural buses as well, and the last school bus route took place before the strike started. Also off work were post office and municipality workers, public and private employees, all participating, demanding the full restoration of the cost of living allowance, which since the financial crisis back in 2013 had been cut. It was partially reinstated in 2018, but now the unions say they want it fully reinstated, not the 50% that they have been getting so far. They've also said that if their demands are not met, further, longer strikes may well be on the cards. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.